The following deep dive on revenue management was put together by Jed Stevens and Linda Sylvester of Koloa Kai Vacation Rentals in the second quarter of 2024. Enjoy. Okay, so here we are. We're about to go through our pricing procedures, how we actually do what we're doing, making all those adjustments. We use a couple of different data sources for that. We'll be walking you through the data source that we use to kind of get an eye on where we are relative to the market. And then we'll jump back into our actual pricing software to make some of those adjustments and show you kind of how we go about the process of aligning those two curves. So without further ado, I'm going to share the screen and we're going to get right into it.
This is what we do every week.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point to mention, is that we do this process every Tuesday morning. We go through and look at how is Koloa Kai doing on occupancy, average daily rate, and RevPAR. Again, from the last section, that's revenue per available room or per available night, just depending on how you want to look at it. So,
and we divide it up by the size of the property. So we're comparing one bedrooms with one bedrooms, etc.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is kind of how this would the previous year looked on Koloa Kai. But what we're doing is we go in and actually look at, say we start at the top with condo, one bedroom properties, and we typically look out for the next 6 months or so. The view we usually start with is looking at average daily rate and occupancy. And again, what this does is this references the blue line is Koloa Kai's adjusted paid occupancy. The orange line is the market adjusted paid occupancy. And then we have Koloa Kai average daily rate is the what color would we call that? A darker blue or a bluish gray?
Maybe a teal.
There we go. That's the right number for it. Teal. Yeah. And then we've got in yellow the Kauai South Shore average daily rate. And so this takes our specific property set and baselines it against other one bedroom condos for the next 6 months and allows us to see what our occupancy looks like and then what our average daily rate looks like. And so if we want to focus in on, what our strategy is here, like we've said, I always talk about wanting to be just under the average daily rate of the market so that we can achieve greater occupancy. So if we're just looking at average daily rate, we see here that we are slightly below the average daily rate that's available in the market. And if we look at the adjusted paid occupancy, we can see that effect of being just under the market rate and what benefit we get on an occupancy perspective from that. Now,
and Jed, just before you, because there's so much going on, and I know when I first started doing this could be confusing. You could see right below in the blue that this is comparing 12 property managers and plus or minus 150 properties. So we have, for Poipu area, we have a lot of real data. It's not scraped data, it's actual data that they've gathered. So we're dealing with the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And the difference between scrape data and direct data, again, I know we've covered that in the past, but again, the difference is that scraped data takes the advertised rates off of Airbnb, VRBO, other property managers' websites, and shows you what the advertised rates are and what the calendar occupancy is, which means that you're only getting kind of the advertised prices. Now, when we look at direct numbers, which is what this data set here is comprised of direct data, we're getting what the property actually booked for and what the adjusted paid occupancy of those calendars are. So again, this takes away owner bookings, this takes away maintenance blocks, holds, things like that, and it just displays the occupancy that has been paid for. And on the average daily rate side, it shows what the actual paid rate was for that stay. So we're using very, very solid data from a large number of property managers and a large number of properties in our data set. So one of the questions that you might ask is, why would we want to be below the average daily rate? And again, this is our property set versus the market. And so what we're trying to take into account is not just that our property set might not be all one bedroom, oceanfront, top of the building kind of properties that set the highest rates, but it's a collection of a lot of those different properties. So some are garden view, some are mountain view, some have ocean views. So all of that goes into our average. And that's part of why we like to keep ours a little bit below the average rate, is just because that's part of our property set makeup at the moment. And we're working on getting a finer tuned appreciation of, different property attributes that would give different rates. And we're working with our data providers on that as we speak. So for now, what we've been able to do is use that strategy of slightly lower average daily rate and slightly higher occupancy to produce a higher revenue across the sample size that we're looking at. And so we see here that in September and in October, we're not exceeding the market in revenue booked at the moment. So this would be an area where we're going to jump in and take a deeper look at it. So we're going to switch back over to the average daily rates, and we're going to look at paid occupancy. And rather than looking at it on a month-to-month view, we have the ability to jump in and see what's actually happening in those weeks. So we see right here that our revenue is a little bit lower than the market here than maybe we'd like. And even though the occupancy is higher, that is correlating into a lower revenue than the market. And then we see here that even though our average daily rates are probably right where we want them to be, our occupancy is low. So what we do in these cases is we actually jump in and look at the weeks, not just the months. And we can see that in these particular little windows here at the end of August and first part of September, we have lower bookings than we might expect. And then again, on the 5th of October, we have no bookings for that particular month. So rather than making knee-jerk reactions and changing the pricing outside of what our preferred paradigm is, we have the ability to see, oh, well, at this point, we are 5 months out from that week. We don't necessarily want to go making massive changes, but we're going to keep our eye on that section to make sure that as bookings come in, they're coming in within the right framework. And that particular approach is what has allowed us to get higher occupancy numbers and very close on the average daily rates throughout these time periods. And so when you jump into an area like this, where we see there's lower occupancy here, given that we're pretty close on the average daily rates here, we might want to go through and make some adjustments to this June 22nd through July 6th period. And the way we do that is we jump over to our dynamic pricing system. We go into our reservation grid, which takes a minute. We have the same kind of filters set up on this side to where we're going to look at only 1 bedrooms. And then we're going to have a look at just the June 22nd timeframe. So right over here, we wanted to look at June 22nd through July 6th. So over here, we're going to look at June 22nd through July 6th, and we see what are our rates looking like through this period? Do we feel like making an adjustment? And basically what we're doing when we're scanning this field here is we're looking for outliers. We're looking for something that just doesn't make sense. We're looking for something that seems like there's a massively large problem with what the rates are. And if we don't see any specific outliers, then what we can do is we can select all of these, and then we can edit those listings and go through and we do a time-based manual override. So we can take this time frame from June 22nd through July 6th, and we can affect say we wanted to decrease the price by 5%. This will allow us to decrease the price in that area by 5%. We can still maintain the dynamic fluctuations. We're just taking that price and dropping it down a little bit, however much we think is important. And then if we were to hit save changes here, that would affect all of these properties during that time only in editing or adjusting those prices. And so I'm not going to make this change because we're just talking about it for instance, but what I can do is I can go in and we can check out a specific property, and we can see here that we have already actually done that price change. So we had a price change that we did last month or last week, where we took the price down 12% on a newer property that we've got in our set that shows that we're encouraging bookings in that area. It'll show us exactly what this price is made of. So we've got the base rate, we've got the seasonality, we've got the day of week, the search demand that's impacting that, the prices due to the year over year market performance, and then also any manual overrides, to where we're able to really, really get a fine tune on what we're doing on that particular property and adjust it so that we can ensure that we're going to get bookings in that time period as well. So,
And I just wanted to say two things. Is one, when we were looking out at October, November, we're probably not going to react to that because we're looking at 1 bedrooms. But if
yep,
we were looking at 4 and 5 bedrooms, we would react to that because the booking window is a lot farther out for the 4 and 5 bedrooms. And the
exactly.
other thing is the rev pan and the rev par are really the more important numbers, because that shows how much income you're making in a whole month, not a daily rate. So you don't want to get too hung up on a daily rate. You want to really, in order, if you're looking at this as an investment and you want to maximize your income, you want to be looking at your rev par and rev pan.
Yep, because the revenue, like we talked about in the last segment, the revenue is what you're actually going to be earning at the end of the month. And so, just like we talked about, we go through this process for not just 1 bedrooms, but we go through this process for our 2 bedroom condos where we have a similar graph and we go through a similar analysis. They've all got slightly different character and slightly different curves, but what we're shooting for is that each of them have a very healthy rev par curve. And you'll see in this one, we've still got a little bit of work to do in this July and August range. This is 2 bedroom condos. And I believe the last time we did pricing, we made adjustments to that area, and that this curve here is shallower than it was last time we talked. So we know that our adjustments are making the progress that we want them to in that way. And so we go through and look at, not just the 2 bedrooms, but we've got this same report that we look at for 3 bedroom condos. We have that report for 3 bedroom houses, which is a different market than 3 bedroom condos. So we definitely have that same sort of thing that we're looking at. And again, despite the fact that not all of our homes are oceanfront and waterfront, the fact that we're able to outcompete the entire 3 bedroom housing market through the summertime with still some work to do in August is pretty outstanding, because not all of our properties are those oceanfront, ultra high luxury properties. A lot of them are in neighborhoods. They're in the VDA, which is good, but they're still not the kind of properties that you would expect to have to overpay for as a guest. And yet we're still yielding higher returns for our owners in that section than most of those others are, according to the market. So we go
And
through.
the other thing, just to reassure, is if you have an oceanfront property that's remodeled, got air conditioning, got everything, then your base price is going to be higher. So you are making more money than a garden view on one that's not remodeled. So
Exactly.
that's already reflected in the numbers.
And that's the wonderful thing about how we do this pricing scenario, is that these homes are valued and priced based on their own attributes. So you'll see that we've got one property. This property has ocean views and mountain views. This property does not have any ocean views, only has mountain views. And this is an oceanfront property. And they're all performing according to their own specific attribute set. And we extract as much value and as much yield as the market will bear from each of them according to whatever their attributes are. So the wonderful thing about this is we're never going to be put in a position of saying, I'd really like to increase your rates, but your neighbor 2 doors down, I can't get those rates for your neighbor. Therefore, I'm not able to get those rates for you. Every single property in our pricing portfolio is pushed as much as the market will bear for that particular property. So if you've got something cool and unique about your property, and that comes through in the listings and it comes through in the reviews and things like that, then your average price will be reflected by the market, including that scenario, including that additional feature. It's not about a type class or a size or a certain thing. It's not like we're ever going to put anybody into a box. It's that your property will perform as well as it can perform. And we've got all the tools in place to make sure that your property performs as well as it possibly can based on its own attributes, which is wonderful. So that, in a nutshell, is how we do our pricing work. And if you have any questions, if you are interested in setting up a time to go through with Linda and I to see how your specific property is performing, we'd be happy to do that. But generally speaking, that is the methodology that we go through that allows us to outperform the market, because in our experience and based on everybody that we talk to in the industry, there are not many managers out there who are taking such a granular look at how to make sure every single property in their portfolio is performing as well as it possibly can. And the result of that is we're getting better than market performance out of everybody's properties. So even in a challenging market, it's nice to be able to return good results and to have good things to talk about with everybody. So so next we're going to go into some other ways that we're bringing in some more things to increase bookings and to keep search traffic high.